I wanted to see how this extreme intense thing that I experience appeared from the outside. Cluster headache cycle that began on August 8th. During this cycle, I decided to experiment with distracting myself from cluster headaches by attempting to capture them on video. So I'm experiencing one beginning now. The left side of my head is going haywire. I'm doing my best to sit still, but I'm unable to. For me, well-being is a whole life thing. It involves what they call the biopsychosocial paradigm. So that's biological, it's psychological, and it's social. I've gotten very good with the biological piece and the psychological piece, but the social piece I could still use some work on. So I found video can be an effective way to communicate, and I've been using it to communicate with myself around how to get better with the social dimension of this. I decided to turn this into a project that I put out into the public domain in order to communicate things in a way that doesn't fall into the same categories of discourse that most conversations about health stuff do. What I'm going to try to do is just keep narrating this as it happens. So it's the middle of the afternoon. And I can't all I see is a patch of blur around my left side field of vision. Because my left eye is tearing up. It's only about 70 degrees. It's a good temperature, according to the thermometer, but I'm overheating. It feels like my body temperature is spiking. There's some phlegm and things that build up in my left side sinus cavities. And so good that my in my throat and lungs, where it comes out of my nose. So here you can see that's enough to begin the actual tearing, which is a product of what they call these autonomic symptoms. Now at this point, I could elect to use one of these high-dose sumatriptan nasal spray injectors. This will cause these symptoms to go away in about 10 minutes. I can use 2 of these per 24-hour period. Each one provides about 2 hours of relief. So if I use these, which retail for about $40 each, I can have 4 hours of relief per 24-hour period. Also, if I use these, the cluster headache cycle will be less likely to taper off and stop. So this is the best medication that industrial medicine has to offer me, and it's a devil's bargain. Even though I have insurance, someone has to pay $80 per day, every single day, if I want to have 4 hours per day of relief. And if I want that to be necessary every single day of the year, because using these things will prevent a cluster headache cycle from tapering off in my situation. Now just to go through a couple of more technical things. So here I'll just show you cluster headache has to do with the hypothalamus and how the hypothalamus processes information. As you can see in this diagram, that is right down in there. It's a very deep part of the brain, and it's right near the brain stem, which is implicated in migraine. That may be why there's some confusion between the two in diagnoses, and why it takes so long for most people to be diagnosed with cluster headache. The other option that can provide some relief from industrial medicine is for me to keep an oxygen tank next to my bed, and begin to breathe pure oxygen when a cluster headache begins acutely expressing itself. It's just as effective for me to hyperventilate, and then I don't have to have an oxygen tank in my little teeny room. When these get bad, there is no such thing as relief from the pain that they cause. And And what's curious about them is that though it feels like something has gone horribly wrong inside of your brain, if I didn't know what was happening and one of these came on, I would probably call emergency medical services, because it feels like you're dying when one of these starts. But the curious thing about them is they don't tend to produce physiological damage in a mechanical sense. And so, although the pain of one of these can be, well, it's the worst thing I've ever experienced. It's an amazing thing, because when I'm not in a cycle and when I'm not experiencing one, I feel fine. And no one can tell the difference between me and someone who does not experience these things. Alright, this video is going to get too long, and it feels like this one, the worst of it, is through. It's very mild, between a 3 and a 4, I would say, on the 1 through 10 KIPP scale is what they call it. Which is fortunate, because I wanted to use this episode to narrate some of the details surrounding this condition. So, I've been experiencing migraines since I was 16 years old. I'm 33 now. I've been experiencing cluster headache since at least 2006. I say at least because it can be challenging to know the difference between a bad migraine and a cluster headache. And when cluster headaches first began, I thought my migraines had just gotten much worse. Also, this coincided with a life event that happened in 2006. So this is how I know that that was the time that for sure the cluster headaches began, because that's the time that I had to really start paying attention to what was happening with my body. So I made a little diagram of this event. What happened was I fell a few stories through a hole in a broken outdoor fire escape. Here's a before and after. You can freeze it and read the description if you would like to. You can see the areas that were affected by this, highlighted in red. So part of what happened after this is I got extremely serious about well-being as a choice. And part of what that means is learning how to use things like breathing and yoga and diet and thinking and developing good habits to prevent and manage the challenges associated with the health situations that I experience. Alright, here we are another day. I just woke up from a nap. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch autonomic symptoms of trigeminal pain express themselves. So for me, that usually happens on this side of my head. Getting a lot of what they call heavy shadowing right now. This is why my speech is broken and I'm starting to rock back and forth. Alright, now I can feel my eye not working right. That would be my left eye. The vision is blurred. And we're getting some tearing. And it's starting to become quite uncomfortable. Alright, what I'm trying to do is remain as still as I can so that I can let it go back and visually analyze the process. For artistic reasons. I want to see the degree to which asymmetry presents itself as this part of my body stops working. It's good that I'm not out in public right now. This is about the time that I usually have to get up from wherever I am and leave as quickly as I can so as not to frighten people who don't know what's going on. That's part of the challenge of living with cluster headache. So what I'm doing is I'm applying pressure to points here on my elbow to try and keep the involuntary muscle tensing from causing damage. I'm sitting on a 6-inch thick piece of foam on top of a yoga mat that I use in lieu of carpeting in my bedroom. This is a fairly mild one. Well, not that mild. Maybe a 7 on the 1 to 10 scale. Try and pull myself together a little bit. Otherwise it'll be too difficult to analyze this tape for me when I eventually feel better. Because this is, maybe a KIP 7. I'm still able to form words. And concentrate somewhat just by focusing my attention on this activity. this feels like it's going to get substantially worse. I'm going to go ahead and terminate the recording at this time. So, I would just like to show you the results of a survey done by clusterheadache.com from 1999 until 2013 of 12,026 cluster headache sufferers. Now, this is not a scientific survey, but it's also not biased in favor of industrial medicine, which I find is rare, and it has a very large sample size, which is also rare with anything associated with cluster headache because it's not an industrial medicine priority. So according to this survey, only 13% of respondents found that the best abortive method existed. So Imitrex injections are what they use. Imitrex nasal spray I find to be the best abortive method for myself. But 13% is not very effective. As far as preventative, it's even worse. The best preventative was only effective for 9% of respondents, according to the survey, and 46% saying nothing works. Good morning. My alarm clock today was a cluster headache. The sun is not quite out yet. This is a fairly common thing during a cycle. So I haven't slept more than 2 hours. I hope that I'll be able to go back to sleep when the pain is subsided. If I can't get back to sleep, I'll be exhausted all day. If I can get back to sleep, I'll sleep for 2 to 3 hours and wake up like this again. That's pretty much how these things work. But one of the things that has resulted from my experiencing this is an inability to work any kind of normal job. I can't keep a schedule. I have to sleep when I'm tired and wake up when I want to wake up. Anything other than that, if it happens 3 days in a row, I'm going to get a migraine that's going to trigger a cluster headache, and then I'm going to be in cycle and unable to do anything. So I can't work a regular job or do regular education stuff or do most of the things that most people count on to be able to do all the time. Now, most of the time I paint pictures, and that's how I make a living. I can't stare at a computer screen for very long, so um, that's the best I've been able to find as far as somewhat steady employment. It's something I can do even when I'm experiencing extreme difficulty. I also do consulting work. What I've found is that no one believes that I could possibly know the things that I claim to know unless I provide proof, verification of that. So how I do that is by obtaining letters, such as this one, from leaders in fields that pertain to whatever, whatever contract I'm attempting to get. So this one is from Dr. Oliver Markley. He is a leader in the field of future studies, has been for a very long time, and like I said with the other thing, you can just freeze this and go back later if you're curious what it says. But basically, the important part of what I'm trying to show is that I have to do things differently, because it's impossible for me to do things the way that everyone expects everyone else to do things. I've sort of figured out a way to make it work, but it's only sort of. And when I have 2 to 3 functional hours per day when I'm in cycle, as opposed to the 16 functional hours per day that most people have, I have to really be wise about how I use my time. So the way that I do that involves a matrix of fundamental needs that I developed from Manfred Max Neef's work around fundamental human needs. Because I think Maslow was short-sighted and didn't really understand very much. Max Neef, on the other hand, looked at economics and need in a much more comprehensive way. So he looked at existential and axiological categories of need. So his existential categories are being, having, interacting, and doing. His axiological categories are subsistence, protection, affection, understanding, participation, identity, freedom, creation, and idleness. I believe all of these things are needs. When I don't get what I need in any of these areas, it becomes a problem. I think that's true of everyone.
Alright, again, what I'm trying to do is hold still for the camera. So that I can go back and examine how this looks from the outside. And I've never really understood how they look, only how they feel in the experience of them. This one is more intense than the other ones I've so far filmed. It feels like somewhere between a KIP 7 and a KIP 8. All I want to do right now is close my eyes and go back to sleep. I can't. Because whenever I close my eyes, they just come back open from the pain.
That's kind of what I mean when I say there really aren't very good options for people with cluster headache. That's part of what's led me to figure out my own things, mostly involving living with pain as part of life and focusing more on the overall well-being aspects of things, because these are the things that I have control over. I can use breathing, I can use yoga, I can use diet, I can use good habits, but I just have to deal with pain, and sometimes people just have to deal with pain, and that's just how it is, and escaping it isn't always an option for people. Part of what I've learned is how to slow down the body movements that are involuntary during these things. I found if I can keep them
them from being jerky and erratic. And they tend not to cause as much damage. While they're occurring. The next 30 to 40 minutes will probably be very boring. I'm going to turn off the camera.
So here, I'll show you how I used this image. So here is a still shot that I got of my eyes from some of this video footage. And now here, just go down. Here's how I converted that digitally to show the difference in eye shape between the right and left eye while I'm experiencing a cluster headache. I mean, this is the sort of thing that I do to try and understand what's happening when it's confusing. That's part of how I use art. I think art is really important for that reason.
In this video, I was just woken up with the K8 and less good. Alright. Here's another one. I apologize for how gross that looks. It's part of those autonomic symptoms, is sinus agitation. I can't do this today. Alright, so this is about my 6th or 7th attempt at filming the conclusion here. It's the 1st of October, about 11:30 p.m. And some things have happened over the last few days that have made it difficult for me to adequately convey what I want to here. So what I'm going to do is just wing it, because it's not like anyone's ever going to see this anyway. So just to fill in a couple of gaps with my situation. My official diagnosis is trigeminal pain, because I experience cluster headache and migraine. The most difficult thing for me about this experience is surprisingly not the pain at this point. I've learned to manage that effectively. For me, the most difficult bit so I never have any money, and I've got to be dependent on other people for everything all the time. So the money piece of it is difficult for me. The relational piece of it is difficult for me also. It's really difficult for people to be around. So, so those two things are the biggest challenges with this condition that I experience at this point. Also, it's been slowly getting better over the years. This last year I went 7 months without a cluster headache. The year before I went 4 without a cluster headache. This is largely due to things that aren't recognized by industrial medicine, but that are nonetheless effective for me. I'm happy to talk with anyone about those. I'm not going to talk about that in this video. So the last couple of things I want to bring up. Whenever I try and talk about health, people love to bring up that I smoke tobacco. Now, if you look at the statistics, half of cluster headache sufferers approximately smoke tobacco. Quitting smoking does not improve cluster headaches. I have to be really clear about that, because part of how I manage the psychological difficulty of inhuman pain is smoking tobacco. So I'm just going to put that out there and light a cigarette and go on from here. So in watching the footage that I've taken over the last couple of months, it's become apparent to me that I still don't know how to do a good job communicating to people. No one has any idea of what causes these things. No one has any idea how to properly cure them when it comes to the scientific community. There's just management and a lot of unanswered and perhaps unanswerable questions. So what that means is that there's not many very good options. It's likely that I'll continue to experience these things for at least another 20 years, perhaps 30. There are surgical options that are nightmarish. There are other options that are developing involving magnetic stimulation of the hypothalamus and so forth. They're still very experimental, but they're somewhat less invasive. I have hope for these things in the next few years. There are a lot of healthcare providers and researchers and people in general who get very attached to certain theories and then want to test their theories by treating cluster headache sufferers like guinea pigs. I'm certain they're trying to help. It has not been helpful to me to be treated like a guinea pig. I'm unwilling to entertain that option anymore. So the final thing that I want to say here involves language, and the language used to talk about this condition. Because when you look on the internet, what you find is that cluster headaches are frequently called suicide headaches. And I believe it takes away from the absolute necessity to get better at talking about serious things like physical health and psychological health and social health, to term something like cluster headache suicide headache. I think it's stupid. I think people need to stop doing that. And Alright, again, that's Reedsy. It's powered by Spritz. The fellow who made this site was very kind in giving me permission to use this in the video.
So that's all I got. Maybe I'll make this into something with higher production values at some point. Feel free to share it with anyone else. And I feel like it's really important for people to get extremely clear and extremely real about um, helping each other out. For real. Um, I've been fortunate building a good support network and so forth. Um, I can't work a normal job. I can't do regular education stuff. I don't have any money. Um, but what I have are friends and family that understand my situation and help me out all the time. Not everyone has those things, and not everyone knows how to ask for those things. And it took me years to figure out how to do that. I feel like a lot of people don't have years to learn that process. And I feel like we need to get really good, really fast at talking about this stuff together in a way that is respectful of the sovereignty of each individual person, but that doesn't impinge upon the value of our social body as a whole. Now, I don't know if I said that right, but that's part of what I needed to say here.